Well, hi, we're here in my brewing room and we're going to make some wine. I'm Richard, I own Wineworks, and we've got two kits here today that I brought which I think will be of interest to people. Very simple to do, and we'll show you the basic principles. What I'd like to do to start with is just run through the equipment that we're going to need, and then we'll talk about the kits. First thing we need: 25 litre brewing bucket. This comes complete with lid, with an airlock and bung fitted to it, and most importantly, graduation down the side. What we're looking for is we are fermenting 23 litres. Most of the kits now are 23 litres. So if we're making 23 litres, we want a bucket with a little bit of excess capacity so that we're in a position where we can give it a good stir. So we've got a bucket, which is our first point. We have a mixing spoon to do some mixing, a thermometer to check the temperature, we have a hydrometer, which he says trying to get the thing out because it's wet. Hydrometer, which will give us our gravity both at the start of fermentation and more importantly at the end of fermentation. We need some steriliser to sterilise everything that comes into contact with the wine. We don't want any infections. This is also a cleaner as well, so it's particularly good. And once we've done the fermentation in the bucket, with the majority of kits now on the market, although I'll deal with the premium in a moment, with the majority of kits on the market, we then need to transfer them to a secondary fermenter. That gives us an option of the better bottle, which is just over 23 litres and is absolutely perfect for it. We have a glass one, which is probably the best of the lot, but obviously is expensive and is difficult if you need it shipping. And finally, we have a 25 litre plastic container with a large screw top so we can get our hands in to give it a good clean. That takes a bung and an airlock as well. We're also going to need a siphon tube to be able to siphon the wine from the bucket into our chosen container. And at the end of fermentation, we need to transfer to bottles, and we need a bottling machine. So, let's have a look at what options we've got now. The first thing that we must remember with winemaking, as with beer making, is the most important thing is temperature. If we can control our temperature, we will get consistent results and they will be good. If we get fluctuating temperatures, or they're too high or they're too low, we're going to end up with problems. So as a guideline, 20 to 25 is fine for fermentation. First thing, as I say, is temperature. Second thing that we've got to adhere to is cleanliness. That's why we're going to clean and sterilise everything using our cleaner steriliser. So if we look after those two things, a lot of the problems that you hear about in winemaking will never come your way. Now we've got two kits today that we're looking at doing. The first one is the premium, the Wineworks Premium Wine Kit. And this is the Premium Wine Kit. Now the Premium Wine Kit, this particular one is a Peach Chablis, which is a rather delicate, nice rosé. With this one, all we'll do is we'll put the container of juice directly into our bucket. We top it up to 23 litres, we add our yeast and nutrient to it, and we leave it to ferment. Fermentation is about 4 to 5 days. At the end of fermentation, we then add some stabiliser, and we then add the finings. And day 7, you have in your bucket 23 litres of totally clear wine ready to drink. Now the option then is from this container, which will be full of wine, you can then either transfer it into another container or you can bottle it directly from the container, but being careful not to disturb the sediment. So the basic principles of fermentation on this particular wine kit, the Premium Wine Kit, it's simplicity, it's speed, it's designed to give you something that is very drinkable in a very short space of time. But the one we're actually going to make today is the superior wine, because that involves 2 stages. And I think that will give you a better understanding of what's actually happening in this wine making session that we're doing. So the first thing we've got to do with the actual wine kit is we need to make sure that everything we're going to use is going to be clean and sterilised. So, that's our bag of juice. This is filled in a sterile environment, so we know all the juice inside it is totally clean and sterilised. We also have here the sachets that we're going to need to actually make the wine. And we have fining sachets, we have some oat chips, a wine yeast, stabiliser, finings and bentonite. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to make sure our containers are clean and sterilised. This process is exactly the same for beer, for wine, for spirits. So we'll look at what we did earlier. Now, I'm assuming now that we have a clean, sterilised container, and we're now going to start to make our wine. I just want to give it a final rinse, just to make sure everything is off before we add the juice. Right, so what I tend to do to start is I'll add some hot water, because the bentonite, which goes in at the beginning, is a bit of a nightmare. It can clog easily. So if I put a layer of hot water in first, then I can sprinkle the bentonite without it clogging. So, here we go. Here's our bentonite. And give it another stir. You can tell when it's dissolved because it's quite granular, and you'll see this is now looking more like a clouded liquor. Right, bentonite done. Now we're going to take the juice, we're going to take the top off and add and I think you're all pretty impressed with me there that I was not going to spill that. It does take a bit of practice, so if you've not done it before, just practice with the lid on pouring the juice, because it is not easy. It's not an easy solution, that. And then you just rinse that under hot water, because we don't want to leave any of this gorgeous grape juice. You smell it as well. The smell is just great. You might well find as well that some of these containers, the lid is a nightmare to get off. If you find that, don't panic, get your scissors and just snip across the corner, and then you can pour the juice from the corner. Right, so now we need to top up with water. We need a start temperature of about 25, perhaps a bit less. So we'll keep an eye on the temperature, and we'll give it a bit of a stir as well. Don't forget, all the things that come into contact with the wine need to be sterilised. Just keep an eye on the temperature. And we want our volume to be up around the 23. You tend to find when you've done a fair few of these, you get quite good at measuring the temperature. You just get a feel for it, as they say. And there we go. Spot on temperature of 23, 24, and volume at 23 litres. So, final part, You need to, as I say, make sure all that grape juice at the bottom is really well dissolved. Give it a good whip up. And this one we're making is a Sauvignon Blanc. And it's from Italy. The grapes are from Italy on the Sauvignon Blanc. Right, so I'm just going to do a little gravity check to see what we're looking at. Our start gravity is showing 1082, so that's really quite nice. That's going to produce a wine around the 12% alcohol. And what we need to do now is add the oak chips, just to give it a bit of an oaky flavour. I'll sprinkle it. And we'll put a wine yeast in as well. Sprinkle that across the top, and then we'll give it a stir. Just give it all a nice big mix up now. Yeah. The oak chips and the grape juice, it's just a lovely, lovely smell. That's marvellous. So we'll just put the lid on top. Push that down, nice and tight, and we'll just half fill our airlock. Just trying to get the red cap off. Right, airlock half full of water, little red bubbly top on. That just prevents it shooting all over the place and anything getting inside the airlock. Push that into situ, and the wine is ready to start fermenting. So we're looking for a temperature between 20 and 24 for fermentation. It can go a little bit lower, 17 is fine, because the wine, when it starts to ferment, the yeast is reacting with the sugar. It's turning the sugar into alcohol, and when it does that, it provides heat. So if your room temperature is 23, your liquid temperature inside the container is going to be 25. So always remember that throughout fermentation, especially at the start where it's active, your liquid temperature is higher than your room temperature. So I've just put all my little bits and pieces back in there, and then I can leave them on top of the container. Particularly useful that when you've actually got 4 or 5 different ones on the go at once. Otherwise you get things mixed up and you can't remember what goes with what. It's also useful if you've got a card, if you're doing quite a few, keep a card with a record of what it is, which one you've made, when it's ready for fermentation, when it's ready to be transferred, etc, etc. So just keep a good record. Right, so that's us done on this one. I'll just move that down and we'll put it into our fermenting area.